remember how in Wrath of the Lich King the Scourge was trying to resurrect Galakrond, and there was supposed to be a huge storyline about how Yogg-Saron was actually behind the Scourge, because the Scourge was obviously using Serenite to create the Icecrown Citadel, and Yogg-Saron is literally known as the God of Death. However, that plot was abandoned back then, but if the Dragonflight is about anything, it is all about bringing back abandoned plots. Then, at the start of the expansion, we learned Yogg-Saron is alive, his essence was what corrupted Galakrond, and now Iridikron traveled back in time to get this essence and to bring it back. Old gods, as we learned, can only be weakened, they can't die, but what if they just suddenly get a new time-traveled power infusion? Furthermore, we're almost certainly going into the Emerald Dream in 10.2, the new World Tree, and Yogg-Saron literally originated the Emerald Dream. He's like the World Tree corrupting expert. So are we going to see the God of Death, Yogg-Saron, awakened in Dragonflight? So check out how simple these wallets are. You just pop out the cards, you got cash inside, and best of all, you can also add in this little tracker card. They got so many styles to choose from premium leather, aluminum, carbon fiber, and even key cases that can also be fitted with this little tracker. Best of all, the wallets are super affordable, and you can get an even bigger discount with my code DORON, so make sure to use my link in the description, code DORON, and get up to 25% discount. Check out Exter. I'm not sure how many of you remember the Wrath of the Lich King lore and the dropped plot point where they wanted to make some sort of a pretty significant connection between Yogg-Saron and the Lich King, as in he was behind the creation of the Lich King or he had somehow infiltrated him, and that is one of the reasons why the Scourge just used Serenite everywhere. So much Scourge architecture has been built with Serenite, with the most notable obviously being the huge Icecrown Citadel. However, Blizzard this past year or so has literally been all about reviving old dropped plot points and bringing them back, so sort of doing a little bit of a weird counter retcon thing. First off, if you may remember, in the very original lore, the Dreadlords crafted Sargeras, then there was retcon, and they sort of brought that back in Shadowlands with a twist on how the Dreadlords served death, but it was really the Dreadlords behind Sargeras. Then we had the 5 old gods back in Classic from the original document, then it was retcon with the Chronicle, and now in Dragonflight they just brought that old document back. The most likely explanation is that the Titans really are claiming that 4 old gods are there, so the Chronicle is accurate in their view, but the 5th one seems to be from the old god source. That is because the Titans couldn't likely contain the 5th one, so they kinda just pretended it wasn't a thing. So if all these things are happening, seriously, I mean, what is stopping Blizzard from bringing back Yogg-Saron, the God of Death? Think about it, the Scourge was literally trying to revive Galakrond back in Wrath of the Lich King, and now we're getting the actual essence of Galakrond and a very likely revival of some sort. It was also most recently confirmed that Galakrond is the creation of Yogg-Saron. In particular, he was the original, the first undead on Azeroth. Then the undead, the Scourge, will try to revive him. How likely do you think it is that we learn that this plan was planted into the Lich King and the Scourge by the so-called God of Death? However, hints are everywhere. From the start of Dragonflight up to the latest Iridikron cinematic, is just so much is happening. First of all, 2 very important things were revealed around the release of Dragonflight, which I really do not think is a coincidence with what has been happening lately. We got the release of Exploring Azeroth Northrend, which, while you can say that this is because of the Wrath of the Lich King on classic servers, I don't think this is the case, because the entire book basically updates us on what is going on currently on Northrend. Most importantly, Magni talks about Yogg-Saron after the war against the Jailers, so this is post Shadowlands, maybe a little bit before Dragonflight, which is essentially perfect timing for a setup on what is going to happen right now. He said that although Yogg-Saron has been long defeated, the influence still lingers in places where he once held power, and while the influence is sort of contained, his whispers are still heard around Northrend and all throughout Ulduar. Yeah, I know, a little bit of a coincidence. However, then Blizzard just goes on an interview, tells us something akin to old gods can't really be killed, that is not really a thing for them. They hinted that old gods can die, kinda similar to demons, in their own plane of existence, their natural plane, but within the material plane it is just not a thing. Seeing that we're getting hints about Xal'atath, N'Zoth, possibly Y'Shaarj. Let's just say they might have had something in mind when they said this during the interview. It is more than likely that for the old gods, it is just a long rebuilding process to get to full power. But imagine if someone just traveled back in time, took a peek of their power into an artifact, brought it back, handed it to the most civil Praetor in the current timeline. I really wonder who could do that. Yeah, Iridikron, and he literally just did that. He's talking about luring back the Titans to the planet of Azeroth and finishing up what the old gods have started, and that is the corruption of the world soul of Azeroth. We know he's literally working with Xal'atath. We had seen her in that portal. This is pretty much confirmed. We have documents of the Void actually coming back, and by all accounts, Xal'atath may be that fifth old god. Now, let us just quickly look back at what the Dragon Isles told us. We've been to the laboratories of Tyr. We've seen that he has been behind the experiments of dragons, that Galakrond was his mistake. He literally admitted this. The Titan document confirmed that it was indeed Yogg-Saron who had corrupted the waters, and Galakrond, instead of becoming a Titan-affiliated dragon akin to the Aspects, he was turned into a complete monstrosity that ended up being just insanely powerful. However, here is a really important thing you should keep in mind. It was the essence of Yogg-Saron, the god of death, that turned him into this, and it is likely that Yogg-Saron is also behind the decay magic that started appearing recently all over the Dragon Isles. Now, in 10.1, Iridikron played us, stole an artifact that Neltharion had originally created in Aberrus, a sort of a proto-dragon soul that can obviously capture dragon souls or very powerful magic, and he literally took this old god essence of Galakrond and is bringing it back to a time-traveling portal. One of the most important speculation is that the old gods never finished the corruption process of the world soul and were very close to it, but then the Titans interrupted them in the last moment, so he can use this little essence to get that final 5% in to finish it up to 100%. However, what is also possible is that since this is the original power of Yogg-Saron, he could bring it back to Ulduar, empower him so that he can actually break out. Then he can do like a chain reaction to free all the other old gods with Xal'atath at the helm, and then not only are they going to finish up the corruption process, but they're also going to get rid of us. To me, honestly, this sounds like a much better plan. Even more interestingly, all the recent data mining hints pretty much 100% confirmed that we're going into the Emerald Dream, the new World 3 Yggdrasil that Tyrande planted, and we know Ferak is literally going to attack it. We've heard this in the cinematic. Yogg-Saron is like the guy that is behind the Emerald Nightmare, so let's just say he has experience on how to destroy World Trees, which means he might be the first guy you would really want to awake if you're trying to destroy a World Tree. Now, how this is going to play out is super hard to pinpoint. It is definitely possible that Yogg-Saron could be the final unexpected boss at the end of Dragonflight. Xal'atath is obviously hinted at as this genius villain, the most brilliant one, but seeing that we only saw the reflection, there really is no data mining. I feel like Xal'atath is probably the long-term play, possibly the gateway to bring us into a Void Invasion and the Void Lords, and I'm almost certain we aren't going to fight her at the end of this expansion. We've only just really gotten a first hint since the Legion, so I don't think they're just going to blow her up immediately. Iridikron is also very likely going to be the final boss of the expansion, but he could be saved for what is to come in the future. However, realistically, I think Blizzard wants to contain dragons to this expansion and have the next one probably be about the Void, so we might finish him up just by the end of Dragonflight. There is obviously going to be some sort of a reconciliation storyline. They're setting it up with Vyranaut or the Dragon Aspects, realizing that there were the pawns of the Titans, which will ultimately have some sort of a finale, and defeating Iridikron seems like the natural finish to this. I don't actually think we're going to stop his plans, interrupt him in anything. I think the most likely scenario is that Iridikron is going to go through with his devious machinations, possibly reviving Yogg-Saron, bringing back Xal'atath, or just unleashing the entirety of Void upon Azeroth and even corrupting the World Soul, and then we're just going to defeat him so that we can focus on fighting the actual threats that had just arisen. However, with all the hints, Yogg-Saron is almost certainly coming back in some form, and not just him, but pretty much all the old gods. Thank you for watching. Check out the Titans coming to Azeroth by clicking on the screen, and check out my first Witcher video on my second channel. See you next time.